Your morning coffee does not spill. It drifts upward in a perfect obsidian sphere, hovering between the table and the ceiling while your chair begins a slow, silent rotation toward the window. Seconds later, a pressure like a mountain's weight slams you into the floorboards, pinning your lungs against your ribs as the very house groans under a sudden, crushing, invisible force. This is the rhythm of the new world, a place where the fundamental constant of existence has become a volatile, rising and falling tide. The ground is no longer a promise, it is a variable. Some call it the G-Fluctuation, a phenomenon that has rewritten the rules of survival and turned the sky into both a graveyard and a playground. The first signs were subtle, dismissed by many as seismic anomalies or equipment failures in high-precision laboratories. Scales in supermarkets would flicker, showing a kilogram of fruit weighing half that for a fraction of a second. Then came the event now known as the Great Lurch, a 3-minute window where the entire planet experienced a 40% drop in gravitational pull. In that brief window, our perception of reality shattered. Unanchored vehicles drifted into the air like parade balloons, and the ocean surged upward in massive vertical columns of water that didn't return until the gravity snapped back with a violent structural vengeance. Since that day, the tides have become regular, yet their intensity remains a chaotic mystery. We have entered an era where the weight of a person is no longer a static number, but a fluctuating metric governed by a cycle we do not yet fully understand. Architecture was the first thing to transform. Houses are no longer built to simply sit on the earth. They are anchored into the bedrock with massive carbon steel tethering systems. Furniture is bolted to the floors, and ceilings are padded with thick foam, anticipating the moments when the low tide sends residents drifting upward. The very concept of a floor has become a matter of perspective. In coastal cities, the streets are lined with heavy iron handrails, not for the elderly but for everyone. When the low tide hits, you hold on, or you risk being swept into the upper atmosphere. The air itself feels different during these shifts. It becomes buoyant, thick with the particles of a world that has forgotten how to stay down. The most unsettling transformation is not found in human engineering, but in the natural world. Evolution, usually a process of millions of years, has been forced into a panicked sprint. During the periods of low tide, the atmosphere behaves more like a thin liquid than a gas. Schools of tuna and mackerel have been observed swimming through the humid air of coastal forests, navigating the dense fog as if it were a reef. They move with a haunting grace through the trees, their gills straining to pull oxygen from the moisture-heavy air. To see a silver flash of a fish darting between oak branches is to realize that the boundary between sea and sky has dissolved. These air swimmers have become a primary source of protein for a new breed of predators that wait in the canopy for the gravity to drop. Conversely, the masters of the air have suffered a fall from grace. Birds, once the icons of freedom, find themselves crippled by the high tide cycles. When the gravitational pull surges to twice the normal strength, wings become useless burdens. Great hawks and eagles are forced to the ground, their frames struggling to support the sudden, agonizing increase in their own body weight. They have become terrestrial scavengers, dragging their wings through the dirt and mud, crawling like prehistoric reptiles. To see a peregrine falcon, once the fastest creature on the planet, reduced to a desperate, labored crawl across a highway is a visceral reminder that the sky now belongs only to those who can float, not those who fly. Society now lives by the gravity forecast, a broadcast more vital than any news or weather report. We plan our lives in 4-hour windows. The high tide is a time for stillness. Factories shut down. Schools go dark, and people retreat to heavy chairs designed to distribute the crushing weight of their own bodies. The psychological toll is immense. There is a specific kind of dread associated with the hum, a low-frequency vibration in the earth that often precedes a gravity surge. It is the sound of the planet preparing to pull you down. During these hours, the world is silent, save for the sound of labored breathing and the occasional snap of a tree limb that can no longer support its own increased mass. Then comes the ebb. The transition period is a chaotic dance of kinetic energy. As the weight lifts, there is a momentary feeling of euphoria, a lightness of spirit that borders on intoxication. This is the most dangerous time. In the early days of the shifts, people would run outside to experience the sensation of leaping 30 feet into the air. Many did not account for the suddenness of the return. The landscape is now dotted with G markers, memorials for those who were caught mid-leap when the gravity snapped back to its peak. The euphoria has been replaced by a cautious, tethered existence. We move with ropes and harnesses, forever tied to the earth we can no longer trust to hold us. The human cost of this instability is written in the stories of those who couldn't hold on. Consider the story of Sarah, a woman who lived through the early transitions. During a particularly sudden low tide, she clutched her young daughter as they both drifted toward the ceiling of their living room. For a few minutes, they floated in a state of weightless wonder, laughing at the absurdity of it. But the gravity didn't return gradually. It slammed back in an instant. The impact against the floor was unforgiving. Sarah survived with several broken ribs, but the weight of the return was too much for the smaller frame of her child. Now, Sarah spends her days in a reinforced bunker, her feet never leaving the ground, listening for the hum with a terror that never fades. Theories regarding the cause of the gravity tide are as numerous as they are unproven. Some researchers suggest that the planet is passing through a ripple in the fabric of space-time, a gravity well left behind by a massive, invisible object. Others look inward, proposing that the planet's core has become unstable, with its dense liquid metal shifting in erratic patterns that mimic the moon's influence on the seas. There is even a fringe hypothesis that suggests this isn't a natural occurrence at all, but a shift in physical constants that we are only beginning to perceive. However, no official body has claimed to have the final answer. We are simply living in a post-constant world, where the most basic rule of physics has become a suggestion. The impact on global logistics has been catastrophic yet fascinating. Shipping is now a vertical endeavor. Freight is often moved during low tide, requiring only minimal propulsion to move massive containers across continents. This has birthed a new class of laborers known as lofters, individuals who work in the open air during low-gravity cycles, navigating the floating cargo with nothing but handheld thrusters and nerves of steel. They are the cowboys of the new era, living in a world of three-dimensional movement. But their profession is one of the most hazardous. A single equipment failure or a mistimed gravity surge can turn a floating shipping container into a multi-ton hammer, crushing everything beneath it. In abandoned cities, the ones too difficult to anchor, the sight is like something out of a fever dream. Skyscrapers that were not reinforced have slowly pulled themselves apart, their upper floors drifting away during low tides and crashing back down during high tides. These ghost zones are now inhabited by strange new ecosystems. Plants have developed thick, cord-like vines that wrap around everything, anchoring themselves deep into the concrete to avoid being uprooted. These vines often catch drifting debris, creating floating islands of vegetation and urban trash that hover hundreds of feet in the air, held aloft by the strange buoyancy of the low-tide cycles. The social fabric of humanity has frayed and rewoven itself around this instability. Wealth is no longer measured solely in land or gold, but in anchor security. The safest places are those built into deep mountain ranges or underground bunkers where the fluctuations are dampened by the sheer mass of the surrounding rock. The unanchored, those who cannot afford the high-tech stabilization of modern cities, live a life of constant peril. They move in tether caravans, groups of vehicles linked together by massive chains, moving between safe zones like sailors navigating a treacherous sea. For them, the gravity tide is an apex predator that never sleeps. There is a growing movement of people who have begun to interpret the shifts through a different lens. They see the gravity tide as a cleansing force, a way for the environment to shake off the stagnation of human dominance. They perform unfiltered cycles where they purposefully unclip their tethers during the ebb, allowing themselves to experience the full freedom of a world without weight. They believe that humanity was never meant to be grounded, and that we are being prepared for a future where the Earth is no longer our permanent home. Their gatherings are silent, eerie affairs, held in open fields where dozens of people drift upward in unison, a human constellation held together only by hand-holding and shared belief. But beneath the wonder and the terror lies a darker question. Is the tide rising? Data from the last 6 months suggests that the low tides are becoming longer and the high tides are becoming more intense. The peaks and valleys of the gravity waves are stretching further apart. If the trend continues, there will come a day when the low tide reaches zero, an event some call the Great Ebb. In that scenario, the atmosphere itself might begin to drift into space, and anything not bolted to the core of the planet could simply float away into the void. On the other end of the spectrum, the high tide could reach a point where structural integrity can no longer resist the pull, collapsing everything into a flat, unrecognizable layer. For now, we adapt. We have learned to sleep in harnesses, to cook in pressurized containers, and to walk with a heavy, cautious gait. We watch the fish swim past our attic windows and wait for the hum to tell us when to stay low. The world has become a stranger to us, or perhaps we have finally seen the world for what it truly is, a fragile ball of rock spinning through a universe where nothing, not even the ground beneath our feet, is guaranteed. We live in the tension between the float and the crush, a species caught in the middle of a celestial tide that doesn't care if we sink or swim. The sky is falling, or the earth is rising, and in the end, it makes no difference to the person pinned to their ceiling, looking down at the floor they used to call home. The quietest moments are the most haunting. During a perfect equilibrium, those rare minutes between the surge and the ebb, the world looks exactly as it used to. For a heartbeat, you can forget. You can stand in a park and believe the trees will stay upright and the birds will stay in the sky. But then you see it. A single leaf doesn't fall to the grass, but begins to spiral slowly upward, caught in the first tentative pull of the next cycle. The illusion shatters. You reach for your tether, you check the locks on your boots, and you prepare for the world to turn upside down again. We are no longer the masters of this planet. We are merely passengers on a world that has decided to change its rhythm, and we must learn to move to its new, terrifying beat, or be swept away by the tide. As the cycles continue to widen, the definition of home changes. Home is no longer a place of comfort, but a place of attachment. We find ourselves looking at the stars not with wonder, but with a lingering suspicion that they are pulling at us, calling us away from the safety of the soil. The fish in the trees and the hawks in the dust are our new teachers. They show us that survival is not about strength, but about the ability to change when the universe demands it. Whether we are destined to become creatures of the air or to be crushed into the earth remains to be seen. Until then, we keep our tethers tight and our eyes on the horizon, waiting for the next shift in the weight of the world.